at the bottom and then rock the tire back and forth.
Yeah, we got movement.
Really, really close. Alright, we're going to be pulling out a wheel bearing inner seal today on the inside of this knuckle. To do that, we're going to use a pry bar. We slide the pry bar underneath the seal, and then we're going to tap the pry bar. We're going to rotate the pry bar to several spots so that we don't deform the seal in one spot, and remove the inner seal.
I'm not the input.
Alright, the next step in removing this bearing is removing the inner snap ring that holds the bearing in the knuckle. So we're going to locate the tabs in the lock ring that are right here, and we're going to pry the lock ring back so that we can get a screwdriver underneath of it. I recommend safety glasses for this activity. Okay, the next thing we're going to do for bearing removal is remove the hub from the bearing. When you look at the inside, you see the hub surface here and the bearing here. We're going to support the knuckle on either side in our press and find a suitable block to press down on the hub surface to remove it from the bearing. So the first step is mounting it up in the press. We take our block, put it on top of the hub, and now we're ready to bring the press ram down. When you begin to press the hub out, supporting the knuckle like this is going to cause you to bend the backing plate some. Keep an eye on your press pressure and your backing plate to make sure that you're not damaging anything. You should see the hub start to move out of the bearing. And right now you can see the hub traveling out of the bearing. It's important, if you don't want to replace your lug studs, that you put your hand underneath the hub and catch it so that it doesn't hit the ground. Now we've removed the hub from the bearing, and we can press on the inner surface of the bearing to remove the bearing out of the inside of the knuckle. Okay, in the process of taking the hub out of the bearing, the inner race stayed on the hub right here. We have to remove the inner race from the hub because the new bearing is going to come with a new inner race. We're also going to press against this inner race to remove the bearing from the knuckle. So in order to remove the inner race from the hub, we're going to use a tool called a bearing splitter. This is a bearing splitter, and it's going to allow us to hold the inner race in the press and press down on the hub, removing the inner race. So we're going to tighten this up in the bearing splitter, and then we'll put it in the press. Alright, so we got the hub mounted up in our bearing splitter sitting in the press. We supported the bearing splitter, not the hub, in the press. And now we're going to bring the press ram down and drive the inner race off of the bearing. Now, pump the handle, please. Keep going. All right, so we're going to remove the outer seal here the same way that we removed the inner seal. We're going to find a pry bar, slide it under the seal, and remove the seal. And moving the pry bar around doesn't damage the seal, so we can reuse this thing. So we're ready to remove the bearing. This bearing is a little bit different than most typical bearings in that there's a snap ring right here on the outside, as well as a snap ring that we removed on the inside. We're going to be pressing the bearing down, and it's going to come out the inside of the knuckle over here. So in order to set this knuckle up in the press, we need to find a tool that will support the knuckle around the bearing, but is also larger than the bearing. We also need a tool to press down on the bearing that's smaller than the diameter of the bearing bore, so that it doesn't get caught in the bore. So we've decided to go with this plate, and we'll also use the same bar that we used to press the inner race off of the hub. Alright, we have our knuckle mounted in the press. We have the bottom of the knuckle supported with our cone to allow the bearing to slide through it. And we have our plate smaller than the diameter of the bearing bore sitting on top. Now we're going to drive it out. I always like to watch our pressure gauge, and we shouldn't exceed about 7 tons of pressure to drive it out. And we didn't. We're right around 2 tons. Our plate's moving down nice and easy. This bearing's coming out.